I have a question for you. Do you remember the first time you fell in love with nature? For me, it was the birds. I remember lying in my living room floor with the bird guide that my mom had and just studying the pages one after another. And it was just amazing to see scarlet tanagers, an impossible red, indigo buntings, electric blue, warblers of every shade of yellow. I was fascinated. And then one afternoon, I turned a page and I saw a bird I hadn't seen before, the ivory-billed woodpecker. Striking, stunning bird. Look at those clear, focused, haunting eyes full of life and mystery, black and white striking plumage, one of the largest woodpeckers in the world. But in the small description, it said, on the verge of extinction, last seen in 1944. And I remember this as a kid thinking, oh, this is awful. I felt my stomach drop. And it was at that point that I thought, how could we let this happen? How could we let this bird vanish? That was 1978. I was 8 years old. And I realized then we could lose something irreplaceable. And since then, we have lost species at an unprecedented rate. It's a quiet crisis. Let me give you some context. Just in one lifetime, in a couple generations, we have lost 3 billion birds in North America. 3 billion. That's 3 billion less birds in the sky and 3 billion less birds singing in the spring. And the Atlantic cod, I remember hearing in the 1970s, you could catch them everywhere. They were so thick that in the water, fishers said you could walk on their backs. Today, they're commercially extinct in some areas. And how about the fireflies? Do any of you remember chasing fireflies as a kid? Do you see them anymore? Yeah, some of you do, right? Do your kids even see them much anymore? This is what the biodiversity crisis looks like. And this is not only North America. In Massachusetts, we have over 450 species in our endangered species list, hundreds more at risk. And here's the really tragic and terrifying part. And it's called the shifting baseline syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of it. It means that each generation accepts a degraded environment and they inherit it as normal, which means that your grandparents saw more birds in the sky, you less in the sky, and your kids even less again, until we forget about what we've lost. But I'm here to let you understand that we don't have to just figure out how to stop biodiversity loss. We can actually bring nature back. So I want to give you a story of right here in Massachusetts with the piping plover. Small little shorebird on the beach, could fit in your palm, little orange legs. This shorebird, in the mid-1980s, not long after my ivory-billed woodpecker experience, we had fewer than 200 birds breeding pairs left in Massachusetts. Fewer than 200. Why? Well, the beaches had been developed, off-road vehicles had crushed them, predators had picked off exposed nests. People didn't even know about these birds. They were on their way to extinction right here in Massachusetts and globally. So in 1986, Massachusetts decided to do something. Scientists, conservation groups, beach communities got together, protected the actual nesting sites for these birds. They monitored those nesting sites, they educated beachgoers, and they did this year after year after year, and it wasn't easy and it was controversial. There were no shortcuts, no quick fixes, just dedicated, committed effort. And in 2024, Massachusetts beaches recorded 1,200 breeding pairs. 1,200, that's a 500% increase. And that is nature coming back. That is nature coming back. And we've seen countless stories across Massachusetts of this happening. We've seen old dams removed and migratory fish coming up rivers for the first time in 200 years and people crying when they saw it. And we've seen cranberry bogs turned over and 100-year-old seeds that have been buried there come up and flourish and create whole new native flowering wetlands. And we're rewilding our cities so people and wildlife can thrive together. But it's not just here in Massachusetts. Globally, it's a movement. In the United Kingdom, there's an actual law that requires developers to increase biodiversity by 10% for every development project. Not maintain it, not mitigate the damage, increase it. And here in India, they built the largest wildlife crossing in the world over the busiest expressway on earth, the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, so that elephants and tigers can cross safely. And in Africa, they have the Great Green Wall Initiative to restore 100 million hectares as a living green barrier against desertification. And none of this happens, by the way, by accident. It's through intentional leadership, policies, and people coming together. And that's why in Massachusetts we did something extraordinary this summer. We set the first goals for biodiversity conservation out to 2050 because we know we've got to do the big restoration and protection of our lands and waters and ocean, but we also have to make our backyards and neighborhoods thrive. Pollinator gardens, urban forests, rivers cleaned up, herons coming back and hunting, fish returning to rivers that hadn't been there before. This is a vision we actually can reach. We can actually reach it. And so I'm going to tell you something that I think you all can do. Here's what you can do. Tonight, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. I want you to turn off your lights between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Just that one thing. It sounds absurdly simple, I know. But let me tell you this, and this is why it matters. Artificial lights disrupt the fundamental rhythms of life that they've followed for millions of years. So what does that mean? Well, insects, they navigate by the moon and the stars. Now they spiral around porch lights until they die of exhaustion. Birds use celestial navigation. Our lights disorient them, they crash into buildings. Moths can't hunt. Amphibians can't find breeding areas, and bats don't get the food they need either. So we've lit up the night, and we have to give back the darkness that species need to survive. And you can do this tonight, just that one thing. But let me ask you this. If you do that, is that like helping the piping plovers come back? It sure is, and let me tell you how. One small house that turns off its lights, small impact. 1,000 houses, real impact. 10,000 houses and we have a movement, and that's how we brought the piping plover back. But here's the truth we all need to face. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it, and we depend on it, and we can only help by being a part of it, because when we do help nature, it resurges back. If you give the care and the time and the effort, nature will explode in exuberance. That's what it needs. That's what it wants to do. So for the ivory-billed woodpecker, I want to take us back there again. Most experts say that the ivory-billed woodpecker is extinct, gone forever. But in the last few years, there's been recent sightings, blurry photographs, audio recordings, deep in the swamps of Louisiana and Arkansas. But I'm going to tell you what motivates me, because I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if they're real, if the birds are back or not, but I'll tell you what motivates me. There are people who will go out to these swamps to find the birds and protect that these old-growth swamps exist, just on the chance, just on the smallest chance that a few birds survive, because we owe them this. This is what our work requires. Not certainty of success, but refusal to quit. And that's how all of us can make a difference. So I'm going to ask you a question. Does biodiversity still have hope? Yes. but only if we act, only if we help. Can biodiversity recover? Yes, if we let it. But let me ask you a question. What will you do? Not someday, not when it's convenient, tonight, this week. What are you going to do? What will you do to bring nature back? And let me tell you why that's important. Because the natural world is waiting for your answer. Thank you.
So